Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to a very locally sourced episode of Small Town Failing Podcast. I think that makes sense. I am your host, Joe, joined this week by Milissa from Midwest Monsters. Right. And that's it. That's all I got. Hi. Thanks.
I'm so happy to be here.
So the reason I keep butchering your name is it's Milissa, but it's spelt with an I, and actually it was a really interesting story that I'm now going to ask you to tell again, even though you told it like 5 seconds earlier.
That's okay. My name is supposed to be Michelle, but the nurse wrote it wrong on my birth certificate and wrote Melissa. So there you go.
They
I'm
just stuck with.
Melissa.
Did the nurse misspell it, or not? That sounds terrible to say. Your misspelled name the way it's wrong,
I mean,
but.
it is. It's fine. Yeah, I guess my parents were going between the two, and then it just got combined. So
Just went with it. Nice. Okay,
yeah.
perfect. That's like a super cool story. So I feel like you got more. I have Joe. That's it. There's nothing interesting there. But um, so we have kind of known each other virtually or Instagrammably or whatever the word is for a long time. You were a listener of Bloody Good Horror. Not that you're not anymore. I just assume when I left, most people stopped.
That's
But
correct.
I've got to imagine there's still people enjoying it. But so we had kind of known each other, and you do, I don't even know how to describe this, but like small sculpturesque type horror that you can describe it a lot better than I can.
I make monsters, clay
There you
monsters.
go.
Um, Basically just kind of anything that I can think of that I think is cool. It's mostly monsters, but I've made all kinds of stuff, and I draw and I paint, a little bit of everything.
Do all that. What is like the most recent one you've kind of been working on or doing your
I
thing?
just did the thing, and that was probably the grossest one I've ever done.
It is. I'm looking at it right now, and it is
Yeah,
like the legs specifically are tough
as I was doing
to
it,
look
I
at.
was grossing myself out. Mostly they tend to be cute, but that one is not. There is no redeeming factor to that one. It's really gross.
The eyes, you could maybe argue that the eyes have a little bit of, I wouldn't go like Wally, kind of adorable,
Yeah.
but there's something,
Some
you can
sadness
find them.
in those eyes.
But yeah, it's the stuff is awesome. It's midmid.west monsters on Instagram. You can go and find stuff, and obviously we'll post up in the notes and everything. But more importantly, what is kind of your history with the movie we did this week? I should say is dear God, reporting for Christmas, reporting at Christmas, reporting for Christmas. And it is not technically a Hallmark movie. It is Nicely Entertainment is the company that put it out. But for all intents and purposes, it follows all the same beats and has the same sort of vibe. It's on Hulu right now, so you can watch it there. What is your history with like Hallmark movies or these types of movies or, the holidays
Um,
in general?
I holidays in general. I'll just go back to my past
Yeah.
when I was young.
Start from
Um,
birth.
I am brand new to Hallmark movies.
Mm.
I think like all 90s kids, I've watched some Lifetime ones,
Mhm.
especially with like my mom to like learn how to not be kidnapped. Those kind of movies.
It worked. I mean, I assume you're
Yeah,
not in a
I
basement
was
right
not
now.
ever kidnapped. She did a great
Perfect.
job parenting. Um, but no, I hate to say it, but I'm a little bit, or I have in the past been a little bit of a Grinch, and I'm
Sure.
not really a Christmassy movie kind of person. But now I have young nieces, and my black heart is melting,
Yep.
and I'm getting into it. So,
I
and
feel like
I'm a
because
little full of shit because The Holiday is like one of my favorite movies, and that's like the like
oh
cheese
yeah,
Christmas
the
movie.
like quintessential. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's interesting because when Leslie and I first started dating, I was in my early 20s and was very like cynical on Christmas too. And I think mostly because I was, a Fred Durst angry young man, just didn't like anything. But over time and now, like, I love it. We do the decorations outside. Like every year I try and go big with, not Clark Griswold big, but you get there. And I feel like as you get older, you get a little more like sappy about the whole thing, and
Yeah,
it's
I'm a
you know
total sap now, it's ridiculous, so
it's very nice. And I think when the thing that did it for me was a while back, Leslie and I decided like, hey, we're married, we're joint income, we know what everyone has. Like, let's just stop doing gifts for each other, and like we just kind of focus on the kids, and we'll do like an ornament for each other. But like, I think the thing I always hated was like the pressure of like,
Yeah,
especially when it
definitely.
was just us two, like we felt like we just had to have a ton of crap under the tree, and like it was stressful. um Although there was a certain magic about like getting drunk after work and then just going shopping.
Love that.
um
You guys
like
can just do that anytime though.
exactly, like especially in Manhattan, like where at the time we were living in New York, like I would roll into a store and they would see like, oh, this guy's definitely had a few. Like they like swarm and they're like, this is really nice, like you should buy this. um but yeah, I think it's especially kids will do it for you.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
there you go. So reporting for Christmas, the reason that I was really kind of excited about this, one, it takes place in the Midwest, which, that seemed to align perfectly with you. And two, despite the majority of it being set in Iowa, and when I say set, just means that's where they say it is, a good amount of it, like the exteriors, were shot in Long Grove, Illinois, which is the town like right next to where we live. Like literally, the wife and kids, we were at Buffalo Creek Brewing, which is a brewery like 10 minutes away from us on Saturday, walking around. So like those little cobblestone streets and stuff that you see in this, like that was us strolling.
I'm so
Um,
happy to know that it's real and
it
it's not
is.
Canada like most of these movies.
Yeah, that is interesting because I looked up and I was reluctant to do a deep dive on Nicely, the company that put this out, because there were a few mentions of this of like, and we could have farmed it out, but we kept everything in America. And I got scared. I'm like, oh God, what am I supporting? But very nice people. I've done a little bit of deep dive, but they've done like 2 or 3 movies filmed in Long Grove. So I don't know, maybe it's cheaper to do it out there. I will say Long Grove used to be, from what I understand, this big sort of vacation spot for people in Chicago. We've only been here like 10 or 12 years at this point, but I don't want to say it's gone downhill, but it's definitely not like a destination anymore. So like it's nice, but like there's one scene where they show it's like a Viking like shop doesn't exist
Yeah.
anymore. Like half the stores that they show in this have closed down. Or it's never really like bustling. Even like Saturday when we walked around, it was like their big Christmas launch, and then there wasn't much going on. Like,
Oh.
I will say the Village Tavern though that they show in there,
Yeah.
amazing, and it's actually the oldest restaurant in Illinois. And Friday
Wow.
nights they have this like keyboard player that comes in and like almost sings like polka style. Like it's out of another world.
I love
So
that.
recommend, I guess. But so you mentioned you're, slowly getting to the holidays. Do you decorate a ton, or like what's your sort of?
I do. I do decorate. We have like, the tree and then I have
Mhm.
a little tree and I make ornaments for my nieces every year.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, so they all have ornaments from like when they were born. But yeah, I mean, I just do like a little bit outside because I'm short and that's about all I can do. But you know, I try to make it as cute as possible. My
Nice.
neighbor though, my neighbor has like they always have to do everything a step above.
Mm.
So for Halloween they had 3 of those 10-foot skeletons.
Oh my lord. Yeah.
One.
No.
And so now they have like a full sleigh and I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like
We have neighbors near us who have one of those and then like a bunch of skeletons, and I don't know if they did it on purpose or just didn't feel like putting everything away, but like literally just left everything up and then threw like hats on, Santa hats. And I'm like, this is it. This is now it's Christmas stuff.
it's fine.
Um we do have, not to boast, like one of those it's not the skeleton, but it's like a ghoul type thing, which is
Oh,
like the
yeah.
10-foot. And that like takes up a ton of space in the garage. So I can't imagine like 3 of them and God knows
Right?
what else they have going on.
I don't know.
It's yeah, I'm sure it's nice to look at, but it's also just a dick move at a certain point, trying to show you
There's
up.
a Griswold house.
Yep, exactly. All right, so reporting for Christmas 2023. I think it just came out, maybe a month ago at most. It's available on Hulu. It's I don't know where to even begin. So we had kind of shared the trailer back and forth and talked about a few different options. Any like initial reactions when you first looked at it, or were you excited? Were you looking forward to like, hey, this
I
seems great?
I was looking forward to it. I wanted more Chicago though. Like,
Yeah,
and you don't really get any Chicago, so you get like a escape of
an
Chicago and
aerial
then
shot. Yeah,
yeah.
it
But
is.
I was
Yeah, sorry.
excited.
Yeah, it's interesting because the whole thing is a setup, and I'm staring at the IMDb because I never remember people's names. But Mary, played by Tamara Feldman, who I don't know from a ton of things, but she's been in a ridiculous amount of stuff. And I just discovered before we jumped on, she was in a Deftones video like 12 years ago, which apparently she's a an avid equestrian, whatever the word is. So this video I found is just her riding around on a horse. But she's done a ton, not a ton of like holiday movies like this. It may have been kind of her first foray, but she plays Mary, which, you know, Mary, a reporter in Chicago who is tasked by Hank, her boss, who I don't know if you recognize, but he was in like every 90s movie ever. Or maybe like earlier in the 80s. If you poke around his IMDb page, you'll realize you've seen just about everything this guy's been in. Um, but she's doing what, like a report on like the drainage system in Chicago or
Mhm.
something.
He's a very serious reporter, Joe. Very
Really,
serious.
which first of all, it's weird because I mean, living in Chicago, I've never heard any issues with the drainage or like where things go, but apparently it's a big deal.
It's huge.
Um, And for some reason, this company in Iowa is one of this Chicago news station's biggest like supporters. I didn't quite piece that together,
No.
why it was so important, but the idea is like back in I don't know, 20, what was it, like the 30th anniversary they were saying this was,
Yeah.
um their biggest selling toy, this mistletoes thing, which is pretty much a stuffed toad with like its tongue hanging out, but the way they talk about it, it's almost like the Cabbage Patch craze that went on in like the 80s, or like Beanie Babies or something. Like apparently it was a big deal. Um
Can I just say the
and
fact that
yeah,
this wasn't called mistletoes is a that's a fail. It should have been called mistletoes,
valid for sure.
right?
Um although I wonder if that would have gotten, if you're poking around. Although I guess if you're poking around Hulu and everything's like Christmas fiasco and greetings from the North Pole, and then you get mistletoes, I
I'd
think
jump on it.
absolutely. Although expectations might be a lot different of like
That's true.
battling toads or something.
That's true.
Um, so she works at this news station. She's kind of tasked with going to Iowa and interviewing the owner of this toy company. And the reason behind that, I guess, is because they're one of their biggest sponsors and they want to make sure that they're promoting them or something. I wasn't 100% clear on like what the reasoning behind this was, but like Mary has to go and she has to go now. And
She has to go like that day.
she has to drive herself. She does not have any sort of like PA or anything. Like, I'm not familiar with the news world, but I feel like it would have been a bigger deal to go all the way to Iowa than just like Mary going home, jumping in her car and heading out there. But I'm not positive. Excuse me. So that's kind of the setup, right? Like, she is reluctant to go there, and I think you can kind of see where this is going already. Like, she gets set up at this small little bed and breakfast, which, have you ever stayed at a bed and breakfast? They just look like a goddamn nightmare.
No, and I've I have not wanted to. It's
No.
basically just staying in someone's house with a
Yeah, right? Like,
yeah, no,
I
I'm
just feel like
afraid.
everybody would hear you, and like, I don't know what the deal was this one, but there was this nice woman who was like the owner, caretaker, or whatever, Bernice. Um, and it seemed like Mary was the only person staying there until Crash, the camera guy, shows up. But like literally there's two people staying at this place, and Bernice is just, tending to their every need, I guess. goes to this toy company whose name I forget, but at that point, I don't know if it 100% matters. And meets the owner. Turns out the owner's father, so however you want to put that, started this company years ago. Really wanted to be like sort of a traditional toy company and like very big on Christmas. Then the son takes over, and that is Alton. He kind of gets this idea of like, I need to like grow profits and blah blah blah, like typical for these movies. And he starts selling like everything under the sun, decorations, ornaments, candy canes, anything he can get his hands on, and comes up with this idea of the mistletoe. And it comes from what's his Blake, his
Blake, our
son,
lead.
Blake Johnson, which also sounds like, I feel like if you search January 6th names, like Blank Johnson was 100%
Top of the
there.
list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like at least like 8 or 9 Blake Johnsons
Yeah.
were. Um, but we meet him, and he's very much on the more traditional side. Doesn't really care for the mistletoes, but understands that they've kind of made this company. And the town of like Brunswick, Iowa, is known for the mistletoes, like it's their thing. And the kind of conflict is Mary is there, and she's supposed to be promoting this company and kind of getting their story out. And Alton definitely wants to focus on like the profits and how they've kind of made this town and how they're this big company, the largest producer of like Christmas toys, I think, in the
Mhm.
country. And Blake is very much traditionalist, doesn't want to venture outside. So at this point, what was your kind of take on Blake and Mary? Because I definitely have thoughts.
I have so many thoughts. Um, she comes in hot. She comes in just like she's gonna own this town.
Mhm.
He he's just so he's
He's
just like he can't get it together. I don't know. Their chemistry is not good.
It's
I did
weird.
not think they
Yeah.
were gonna like each other.
And they're like immediately pissed off. Like
Yeah,
the
just
thing I've
so mad.
found so like, I don't know, off-putting, or I don't know what the right word is, but like Mary is just pissed off. Like I get she wants to do serious reporting. She has, all these ideas of exposing whatever. And she's shipped off to Iowa to like interview this guy at a toy company. So she's angry about that. But like it's explained pretty well that like this is our biggest supporter. They donate a ton. We need you to make these guys look good. And like she just comes in pissed off. Like she's
Yeah,
immediately aggravated with the owner. Like he offers up like a box full of things that she can look through to get an idea of the company. She's like, I guess this is enough. Like she
yeah.
was a bit of an asshole, right?
She's
Like
very hostile through a good majority of this movie.
it's weird. And there's, and later we meet this person, Lexi, who is like their
She
PR
hates
person.
Lexi so much.
Like a
So
lot of rage.
so much. I have so
So
many questions about Lexi and her.
a lot. And so, she comes and she meets everyone at the company and then goes back to her Airbnb, is looking for dinner, ends up at the Village Tavern that we were just talking about, goes there. Blake and Lexi are kind of having a conversation in the corner. She goes over, or Mary, it's weird. She goes to the bar and they ask her what she wants. And she's like, I'll have whatever Blake Johnson is having for some reason. And it turns out it's like a glass of rye on the rocks,
Yeah.
which is like, I'm not a whiskey person. I don't know if you are, but like that just sounds
Oh,
like
I wouldn't
pure
mind
hell.
it,
Yeah.
but, like, of all the things.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
and she doesn't like it. I don't know. At no point would I walk up and just be like, I'll have whatever that guy just met a half an hour ago in the corner, you know, unless she's, perusing his wares or trying to, do something at that point.
She could have
Um,
had a delicious mistletoe cocktail that they offered her, and she chose that. That's on
which
her.
which apparently is just an appletini with a different name. you know, it sounded nice. She sits down. Lexi is there. They kind of meet briefly. Then Lexi kind of goes on her way. We get the impression that there was romance in the past between Blake and Lexi. I think at one point, even later, like Mary asks, like, "Oh, you guys are together, right?" And we get kind of the backstory of they dated once, they knew each other in high school, but now
Yeah,
it's,
he was like,
strictly
"We have a
professional.
really small town. There's
Yeah.
not many people to date. We dated in high school," but she's not happy about that even then.
There's
So,
automatically tension, and I don't know if they were trying to make it that, like, Lexi was still interested in him and she's pissed off, or, like, what exactly was happening there.
I don't know. She just wanted to wear berets and just be the PR person for the company. She she had that's all she wanted is a jaunty beret.
A
She did
lot of
not
berets.
want so many.
And indoors too, it was very off-putting in that setting. Like, the restaurant is like this kind of old-timey wooden, like,
Yeah,
it looks like it's straight out of the 20s, and then she's in there jaunty, I think is the right word,
just
like,
French.
yeah.
Just straight French
Like,
for no reason.
she ordered a baguette, I'm sure, and they didn't have it, and she was pissed off. Um, the other weird thing is I think this is the only restaurant in this town, right? Like, there
Uh-huh.
was nothing
Like
else.
the B&B that she's staying at, I guess.
But even that, was that just, whatever her name is, kitchen? Like, I didn't get the
Oh, yeah,
impression that there was,
I guess
like,
so. Yeah, it
yeah,
would be.
because and I don't think we're really spoiling anything, but obviously Blake and Mary go on a date later, and I'm like, "Okay, we're gonna get something else." No, we're going back to the Village Tavern. Like, he loves that meatloaf, he wants everyone to try it, and we're gonna go there every day for the rest of our lives.
So romantic.
Blake also kind of drops this knowledge that his grandfather was a painter, and like there's this whole aura around like the company was supposed to be this quaint thing that made toys and celebrated Christmas. And like Blake, despite looking like, he led the charge on January 6th, is a huge Christmas fan. Like, very, he loves the traditions. His house looks like something out of like a Martha Stewart catalog, right? Like,
Yeah, I had so many questions about a bachelor's house looking like that. It looks like Martha Stewart decorated it, and
a lot of knickknacks,
I don't
or
know.
maybe not even like a Rachel Ray type,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
the the pioneer woman from you know from
Yes,
the Food Network. It
yeah.
was it was odd. Like, if I walked into, some bachelor pad and like this is my buddies, would be like, what the fuck's with all the Santas? Like, are you okay?
I like, oh, I don't know.
um let's see. So Blake is very adamant he does not want to talk about the commercial success of the company. He doesn't want to be included in these interviews. you know, I think for all intents and purposes, him and his father do not see eye to eye. And we get this like quick drop that at a certain point, his father is going to retire. He's expecting Blake to take over. Lexi has concerns because Blake's heart is not in this. So I guess that's kind of the tension. Like, it's interesting. And I'm sure you've probably heard like the stereotype is always that like this toy company should be failing, right? And they're not. They're doing very well. Like, the whole thing is just Mary there to film this news segment, which also we should talk about, seems to take place over like 4 days just to get
Yeah,
like an interview with this guy.
yep.
Um, I was very confused about like the amount of detail. It seems like it could have been a Skype call, right? Like,
Yeah, especially when you see I don't wanna spoil anything, but what they actually needed. She spent an exorbitant amount of time in that town for no reason at all, so
the
I'm not
f-
sure.
the final segment, and we'll get to it, is so batshit insane. Like, the edit that they post, it is amazing. Um, But obviously sparks start to fly between Blake and Mary almost immediately.
But
Like,
do they though? Like, did you feel that they, like, really had, like, chemistry?
it was weird, like, and I think weird is the right word. Like,
Yeah,
so they sit down in this first dinner. He says, "Hey, you got to try this meatloaf." She says, "If I try it, like, can I ask you questions or something?" And I'm like, "Why the fuck would he give a shit if she eats this meatloaf?" But
yeah.
he
He
says, "Fine," and because I guess his goal is to make sure everybody tries this meatloaf.
Yeah,
Did you
as he
look
should.
at the meatloaf? It did not look great.
Oh,
Like,
it looked like lunchroom meatloaf.
it
Like, I
looked like a hamburger patty with some like beef gravy on it.
don't
Um, So, but yeah, to your point, I wasn't quite sure if we were supposed to be getting like chemistry between these two right off the
Yeah.
bat or like what was going on there. Like the next day they go and get a peppermint mocha together and like it's weird, right? Like
Yeah.
by day it seems like they're dating, but then anytime they go back to the toy company, it seems like they hate each other's guts.
Yes, and I had so many questions about Mary's outfit choices because one
Yeah.
minute she is dressed in, like, full a scarf, a beanie,
Yep.
mittens, and then they go on a date and she's in, like, a tiny dress, and I'm like, "What is the weather here? What is happening here?"
It was a lot, and even, like, she shows up for, like, some of the segments in, like, almost like a ball gown, but then
Yes.
in the other ones, you're 100% right, like, she stepped out of, like, an L.L. Bean catalog, like
How many
and
outfits
again,
did you pack for
that's what I
this?
was about to say, like, we saw her suitcase, it was very small, like, I don't know how many days she ended up being there, but, like, I do not think she had enough to cover whatever
No,
was going on.
ridiculous.
Um The other thing that threw me off, and this is completely like has nothing to do with the story, but like Crash shows up. He's the camera guy. One, he's banging on her like door, which is another problem I have with Airbnbs. Like at a certain point, like I need some privacy. And Crash is just like banging on her door, wakes her up, and Crash and what's her name? Bernice start to have this sort of romance too. Bernice is the Airbnb owner. At a certain point, she makes him like lunch or something, right? And they show the plate, and he is full on eating like cherry tomatoes. Like it's a plate full of cherry tomatoes,
Yeah.
not cut, not cooked. Like I don't know
Well,
what was supposed to be going on there, but he's like, "This is delicious. I
yeah.
have to get the recipe," and it was very off putting. Um, it doesn't have anything to do with the
You
story,
know what,
but
though? At least they had chemistry. At least he was really into those tomatoes. I don't know. I believed that love story.
they were like yeah, hot to trot, like, the moment she made him, like, eggs or something,
Mhm.
which,
He was
by the
good.
way, also, did you hear her secret for eggs? Salt.
No.
You add salt.
Ooh.
She said something about, like, add salt, and that's why they're fluffier. I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking
Oh,
about?"
that's an Iowa specialty.
I guess Iowa eggs, it's a thing. Um, so what do we got? We got peppermint lattes. This is where Mary finds out the reason he stayed in this town, because he has kind of looked to move on, or his heart is obviously not in the toy company. He has stayed in the town because he loves Christmas. Like that's his whole reasoning. And again, layers of the Blake onion, which I don't fully understand. So what? Oh, then we get to Blake's house, where Mary is kind of wandering around the streets of Brunswick slash wherever the hell that this was filmed. That I'm drawing a blank on now. Um, Goes to his house. She knows it's his house because at one point he mentions that there's like a tractor out front, which was his grandfather. She sees the
Yeah.
tractor, bangs on the door. He doesn't answer, but comes out on the roof, like this little balcony, in nothing but a
Oh my
towel.
god.
Like,
Yes.
at that point, I'm like, what is going on here? Like, we've gone from do they hate each other to just like, is this about to turn into some sort of like Skinamax movie with these two?
I was like, "Well, this isn't Hallmark, so are we gonna get, like, something spicy now?" Like, okay.
Exactly. Yeah, I was kind of thrown off because I don't know how many Hallmark movies I've seen at this point, but I've never seen a shirtless man. And that is not
No. I
yeah.
think it's, like, 1 kiss max, maybe, like, on
Yeah.
the cheek.
Well,
No.
even Mary, when she answers the
Men.
door at the Airbnb, is in like shorts. And I'm like,
Is
oh,
it?
like, whoa, legs. Like, that's not a thing. Um,
Hulu, calm down.
exactly. It was very risque. Um, so what's happening? Lexi, while these interviews are happening, is kind of butting in. Alton, is it Alton, whatever it is. So the owner at the time, he is very adamant that like the mistletoe needs to be in every shot. Lexi's very adamant about that. The first interview, and this is where Mary and Lexi, like we really see the tension. Like
Yes.
Lexi butts in, mentions how you can't see the mistletoe in the shot. Mary doesn't want it in there, even though like this is kind of the point of the whole
It's
thing.
about yeah.
So eventually the
Very
mistletoe
serious, you
gets
can't have a
moved.
toad in there.
again, like it was very weird that like your whole purpose there is to just do this interview because you want to highlight one of your main sponsors. But like Mary is very pissed off about this.
Yeah.
Doesn't want the mistletoe in the shot, like doesn't want to talk about it. But like I just didn't get why, right? Like we all
You
have
could
jobs, we all
seriously
have things we don't want to do, but like
right.
just shut up and fill the fucking toad.
You could you could seriously make a drinking game of how many times she's like, "I need the real story. I need the truth." What
Like
truth?
what
It's about a frog.
right? And like what who gives a fuck? Like do you think anyone's going to watch this and be like, "Oh, they exposed the mistletoe.
Right?
I can't believe this." Like I don't know, like this was going to be our Pulitzer or, whatever the award is. So like that's really at one point like Mary turns around and like rolls her eyes at Lexi. Crash does the same because like he's filming. There's this weird argument about what rolling means every time Crash says it.
Yeah.
And in general, it just seems like they hate everyone that is, works at this company. And it was very uncomfortable, the entire thing.
Especially since it's supposed to just be, like, charming.
Right? Like
Yeah.
it's a news piece about a toad with
Right.
mistletoe on it. Like, why are we trying to crack this story? Um, so eventually Blake agrees to do an interview as well. And, Mary is excited about that. She has one stipulation: Lexi cannot be in the room when this interview is taking place, which again, you're like, why?
She
Um,
hates berets. It has to be that. I
she
mean,
hates berets and she hates frogs, apparently. Like, she makes some statement about how like Lexi has like an agenda and is like pushing blah blah blah. I'm just like, what is the rage here? But again, like Mary just seems pissed off through the entire thing, right? Like it's very unnerving. So so they film Blake, they kind of do their thing, everything kind of wraps, and like the sadness now is that like Blake and Mary are kind of, forming this bond and potentially falling in love. They agree to go out on a date together, which again turns out to be the Village Tavern.
again.
Um,
Yeah.
whatever.
One
Like
place
at
to
this
go.
Yeah, like, so when you heard date, you expected something a little nicer, right? Like,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, nope, they just went right back to that tavern for meatloaf again.
yeah,
The
like
3rd time this week.
how much meatloaf can you eat? Although
So much red meat.
the thing that threw me off was she was very adamant that the meatloaf was amazing, but then the next scene when her and Crash are eating there, and the next day,
She
no
did not
meatloaf in
get
sight.
that. Yeah, she's like, "No."
No, she doesn't get it. She doesn't recommend it to Crash, who is
Nope.
very adamant that he loves a good meal. Like nothing.
Yeah, no.
So
She didn't like
I
it.
Also, not that, they need to stay accurate. I don't think the Village Tavern even serves meatloaf. Like, I don't think it's a thing.
Oh, I'm heartbroken.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
we've only been once and I forget what we got, but there was no mention of meatloaf. Like, I think there's like schnitzel and like ribs and things like that, but
Mhm. That's a shame. Maybe after this movie, they're gonna step up their
maybe,
game.
yeah. Although it was like a month ago we went and I don't think so.
Darn.
um, well, the other weird thing about the interview with Blake, Mary decides to mic him herself.
Mhm.
And like at a certain point, he's like reaching under his shirt. And I think at one point she said, like, oh, the little pack goes in your pocket. And I'm like, is she gonna put her hand in this guy's pocket? Like,
I know. I was like, "Okay, let's
yeah, so
see."
that's the question. By that point, do you think there was actual chemistry there? Or like were you believing their relationship, or are you still kind of iffy on the whole thing?
A little bit, but I was kind of thinking maybe the twist was gonna be that she was, like, flirting with him to, like, try to get the scoop, and
Mm,
then she was gonna leave, and then remember that she was in love with him later, but kind of, they had a little chemistry then.
I'll be honest. So after the date, it turns out Blake, there's some emergency back at the factory. Blake
Yeah,
has to leave, enter Lexi. And this argument they have, I kind of want to get your take because I did not understand
I
like
laughed
what
so hard.
there was a lot of passive aggressive comments, and what I gathered was Lexi didn't want Mary to kind of lead on Blake and distract him from work. What was your? Because I was clueless about why they were so pissed.
Yes, but then she also she also mentions randomly
Hmm.
that he tried to go to Chicago and
Yep.
be a painter and have a gallery, but it failed. And somehow she needed to tell Mary that because I don't know why Mary needed to know about his failed dreams
It
somehow, but
was
he needs to focus on work. But Mary gets super mad
yeah, like
about
real
him
pissed.
lying to her, but, like, he never told her I don't know why she was so angry that he was a painter.
It was weird. So the first time we see these paintings, it's in the factory, and Blake says, "Oh, my grandfather made this. He was a great painter." And I think from what we find out later, that wasn't a lie. Like the painting in there was
Right.
his grandfather's because we do find out Lexi spills the beans that Blake is also a painter. He tried to go to Chicago and make it big, and it just failed. Um, so he also paints, but he still does have some of his grandfather. So he even says when Mary does confront him, like, I didn't lie to you, I just left out some details. So Blake is also a painter, but
Like, if you
also
were dating somebody, let's just say, like, I just was like, I just omitted I make monsters," and they were, like, so furious.
how fucking dare you?
How fucking dare you?
Like it's my hobby. Like it's what I do to unwind. Like
It's not like he had a hidden child.
it's like I go upstairs and tell Lexi, just so you know, I've been podcasting for like 13 years. And she's like, what the fuck?
Oh my god.
I mean, why wouldn't I tell her? First of all, that's a terrible. I know she's listening to like, what the fuck was that impersonation you just did of me? And two, like, why are you hiding the fact that you're a painter? And yeah, so I guess the whole thing is Lexi reveals that he moved to Chicago at one point, tried to like sell his paintings. Now you are an artist. Let's go with that. And that sounded weird too. An artist. Do you, I don't fully know like how this works. If you're an artist, do you buy a studio for yourself? Or I only know studios as like,
If
oh, they
you're
cultivate and have like a handful of
If
people in
you're
there.
independently wealthy, sure. Yeah. Yeah, you can definitely do that. Buying yourself your own gallery is very bold. I don't think I would do that, unless you had, like, a lot of people that followed your work.
Right?
Very bold to just jump out with your own gallery of your own stuff.
And no disrespect to Iowa, but like coming from Iowa, where he
Yeah.
said, like, yeah, I sold a few pieces, moving to Chicago, which is a fairly, I feel like New York, LA, Chicago, like those are fairly big markets. Buying your own studio there, which is got to be ridiculously expensive. Like,
Mhm.
Blake, maybe get a Pinterest first or like
Yeah,
try,
dude.
yeah,
I
some
don't
sort
know.
of,
And, like, these paintings look like Thomas Kinkade ripoffs really hard.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
ooh, no one's gonna be buying these anymore, guy.
It's very like my parents would have gone ape shit for them.
Oh, yeah,
Like you
yeah.
go to Vermont and go into like some quaint knickknack store, and these are the paintings that you find in there, which hey, fits
Like,
Blake's house to a T, but
certainly does.
like not that I am immersed in the art world, but I have a couple friends that own studios, and I've never once seen like these types of paintings. Like
No.
they made Bob Ross's stuff like look edgy, right? Like it
Yeah,
was
they're they're very small town. They're cute. They're quaint,
yeah. But at no point, if that was my style, would I be like, I gotta get to Chicago because
right?
people are gonna be
Chicago's where I'm gonna be selling these.
breaking down the door to get this shit. Um, so, so Mary's pissed. She goes to his house to confront him. Which also, the thing I noticed when she goes to confront him, like they look at his paintings, and he's like, "Well, my grandfather did do this one, but these I did." And if you look, there's like easels and art supplies everywhere. So you're kind of like, "Of course you're fucking painting, Blake." Like,
What the
like
what did she think that they were there for? I don't she's been in
or
his house.
or did your grandfather die like last week and we didn't know it? Like
Yeah, painting.
Like, he's gonna open up another room and like the dead grandfather's gonna be there. Like, this is
I
how he
mean,
wanted to be preserved, like painting.
yep.
Um,
That's who's in that barn he's restoring.
that's right. This he's restoring his grandfather's house, which looked like it was
Terrible.
like a depressing apartment that, someone that frequents the village tavern would
It
be
looks like a
living.
beach shanty house.
Right?
Yeah.
And there was like torn apart like cloth and like plastic covering some of the broken windows. Like, Blake, what the fuck are you doing?
And he brought her to see that too, like, that she'd be like,
Yeah.
"Wow, really
Right?
deep." He's not doing a
It
very good job.
wasn't it also on like the first meeting where
Yes.
like she goes out, she meets him. At this point, she doesn't know him that well. And he's like, come on, I want to show you something. And he like drags her through the town, takes her to this like secluded place with like this broken down shed. And like Mary's like, yeah, this is 100% cool. Like, absolutely, I'm not going to get murdered.
Yep.
Totally fine with it. um, so back to the Lexi and Mary argument. Like, I kind of gathered that that's what Lexi was getting at. Like, hey, you're distracting him. I need him to focus on taking over for his father. There
Right.
was a few seconds, and I have it in my notes where I'm like, is Lexi into Mary? And that's why she's pissed off?
Oh, I love that twist.
Is
I
that going to be the twist?
I would have been really into that twist.
Right?
It would
Like,
have explained all the tension that they had more tension between them than her and
right?
Blake. 100%. Yeah.
um, so the whole idea, the story's done. She has to go back to Chicago, is doing the editing, which we didn't talk about him in the front, but the editor that they have is the most Chicago man I've ever seen in my life. Like
Mhm.
the hair, the mustache, like they might as well have just had Ditka sitting there, like editing her thing, like chewing on an Italian beef sub or something.
Yeah, yeah.
So the boss comes in and he's like, I don't even think we talked about it. At this point, they did the interview with Blake. Mary has kind of edited this thing to be more of like a feel good piece, whereas Hank wants it to be about Hank is her manager at this news place, like wants it to be more about like the growth of the company or something. Like I didn't
Yeah.
quite piece it together either, but
Well, he wants the story that he sent her there for. He wants the story about the damn toads.
that's valid.
Well,
I think I remember I poked her on IMDb after and like someone had commented like Mary did not get the assignment. Or I think that's actually what
no,
Leslie said like when they started having this conversation. Yeah, because you're right. She did not go there and do what she was supposed to do. Like
no.
she spent 3 or 4 weeks in Iowa, I assume, and comes home with like this kind of puff piece about like the history and how warm it is and blah blah blah. So Hank is like, "Listen, asshole, you fuck this up. I'm going to go edit it myself and put it
Yep.
on." So the other weird thing is she does not see it until it airs, right? Like
Right. Right.
at no point is Hank like, "Okay, I did this. Why don't you take a look? Like maybe give me some feedback and we'll see what we can do." He's like, "No, fuck you. I'm done with you."
Yep.
Um and we have to talk about the final piece because it was fucking bananas.
It was so good. I laughed out loud.
I was like hunched over and I'm sure the same line that you had, but like it is. The entire thing ends up being about the growth of the company and the money and all that. Like they show I hate when movies do this where they have like clips or pictures of the
Right.
actual movie, but
Mhm.
you know there wasn't a camera there filming. Cause at one point there is the bartender talking about the mistletoe drink,
Yeah.
which looks like an interview, but we never actually saw that happening. Uh Alton, the clip they show of him is him saying like where he wanted the mistletoe in the shot, right? Like he makes this
Yeah.
comment about like it's my little sidekick here and blah blah blah, but like that wasn't part of the actual interview.
Right.
And then Blake, and this is the part that got me, and I'm sure you too. The one like half a second blurb they get from him is like a close up of his face where he's going like, "It's all about the money. Like
Yep.
that's what we're here for." And the weird thing is like we didn't have
Amazing.
context of what he was talking about at that point because I don't think we actually saw like the idea is that there was this big long interview and the boss like took like this 3-second clip and like, oh, he's the bad, news guy who skewed everything. But like we don't know what Blake was even talking about in that. So like
Yeah,
maybe Blake did have like a moment lapse where he's just like, fuck it, like let's just make money and that's all I care about. Like we don't know.
I don't
Um
know.
so that's the article. Mary, or the news. Mary is watching it with her friends who are like, this was great. I think it was awesome. Everybody thought it was awesome, but like, who sees a piece where there's just a
I
man
don't
saying
know.
like it's all about the money and everyone's like, you did great. This is perfect. Like
That was amazing.
it
I
was
don't know.
so confusing. Um and obviously Mary's pissed because they completely like ripped apart her story that she had worked on, decides to take a trip to Iowa, which
She
I
again
don't,
just gets up and leaves in the middle of the
on a
night.
whim, like I don't know how long of a drive that is, but it's got to be like 10 or 12 at the very least.
Right?
And Mary seems to be going back and forth like every other day. Uh,
Nonchalant.
so yeah, goes back, doesn't call, doesn't like try and get in contact, just shows up to find Blake, which, sorry, I know I'm completely off topic. I don't think there was a single cell phone in this movie. Like at no point was there any sort of communication outside of like physically going to someone's house. Like
Yeah, she just constantly just puts herself places without calling or
pop-ins,
texting
a
or
lot of pop-ins. And I don't know what your stance is on the pop-in, but I fucking hate it.
I will
Like
hide in under my bed if you just pop over to my house. No, thank you.
when you were growing up, and you don't have to give me too much, but were like pop-ins regular things? Because
Oh, not at my house because my mom was also not gonna allow that to happen.
God bless her, because
Yay.
they were constant. We had a lot of them, and now looking back on a lot of vacations, like my father's family is originally from Long Island, and we have a lot of family still out there. And I remember we would go out for like trips to see my grandfather, but then would just pop into other people's houses. And at the time, it seemed normal, but now looking back, I'm like, were we monsters? Like, what was going on?
Yes,
Like,
you were. I'm
I
sorry.
apparently, I mean, I had no understanding of it, but now I think about it, like if anyone did that, I would fucking lose my shit. Um,
Or would you come out in just a towel
I
in bed
guess
and
like I
can go
maybe
both
we
ways?
we need to build some sort of deck in our house like over the
Yeah,
front, or like we do have like a fairly large picture window, so maybe I could just like walk in front of that and be like, "What are you
perfect.
doing, Jeff?" um so she goes back to Iowa, finds Blake, who is very pissed. Like even makes a comment like, I'm not mad about like the final edit was, I'm mad that I trusted you. Like and and Mary explains that like that's not what I wanted to do. That wasn't my original plan. Like, my boss took it, did his thing, but Blake is like having none of it until Mary says, you know what, I'm just gonna stay here and move here and live here. And this is where I'm gonna spend the rest of my days. Like it was
But
such a hard turn.
I I wrote in my notes, so you're just gonna give up all your dreams for this guy all of a sudden now, even though the whole movie she's been such a bitch
Right?
because she's for her career, and then all of a sudden she's like, "Forget it. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
like
just live
she
here."
gets dicked over once by her boss, which I've got to imagine in the news world is constantly happening. So this cannot be the first time that you've had a
Right.
shitty experience. But like, yeah, she's like, I guess the town council needs someone and they don't have enough people. So she's going to fill one of those spots. And her whole thing is like, I wanted to do the news because I wanted to change lives and help people. But like now she's going to help Brunswick. Like, I don't know what sort of pressing matters are happening there, but it seems like a very quaint town that probably doesn't have a lot of issues. But
Through this entire movie, we've seen 5 human beings in this town.
yeah,
So you're gonna be changing the lives of 5 human beings instead
I,
of your dream career that you're leaving.
I mean, maybe she's there and she's like, my goal is to get a second restaurant in this town. Like, this is what I'm here to
Mhm.
do.
I guess
Um,
so.
um, we forgot to mention Crash also moved there. Like after how many days of staying at the Airbnb, him and Beatrice are now like living together or something.
Loved those salted eggs so much and those tomatoes that
Those
he
tomatoes, yeah. Um,
Handle it.
and, and that's kind of where we wrap up, right? Like,
Yeah,
I didn't fully understand. So Alton announces that he's leaving the toy company, right?
right.
And Blake is not taking over. I don't. Did we find out who is? Is it Lexi? I would assume it's Lexi.
I
Um,
yeah, we'll just say it's her. I mean, she's probably more fit for the job, to be honest.
I guess, yeah.
She seems like she had it together.
Although Lexi does apologize, right? Like her and Mary kind of bump into each other when Mary
Yeah.
comes back, and like they have a heart to heart.
Still
And
don't
I
think
don't.
she had anything to apologize for, though. She really wasn't doing anything wrong.
She was doing her job, like.
I'm sorry if I dated someone in high school, like, calm down.
Yeah. And like looking back now, like it seems like Lexi was the one trying to drive Mary to do the story she was supposed to do to begin with. So
Her
I
job,
don't know. Team Lexi out of this whole
right?
thing. So I know we jumped all over the place. Anything else you want to hit on in this? I feel like we touched everything, but I also just completely went off the rails. So
No, I think we definitely covered it. It was such a hard turn that last 10 minutes of the movie. Everything was normal in the beginning half, and then that last 10 minutes, it was like, "Oh, you're mad at me? Okay, I'll move here and give up everything for you." And I was like, "Well, that's what we're gonna end on? Like,
yeah.
that's
Yeah, like
ooh."
the report is shit. So I'm driving back to Iowa tonight. I'm gonna move to this town for this guy I met less than a week ago. I'm
Yeah,
gonna like completely abandon my career, like not even try and get a job. Like there's gotta be some
no.
sort of local news station not too far away. But like, no, I'm just gonna be on the city council and help you open up your shitty studio, Blake, so you can sell your,
Yeah, your Thomas Kids
tchotchkes. Yeah.
knockoffs. So I was like, 2023, this is where we're ending is just give up your dreams for a man. Okay.
It is. I mean, I talk about it on just about every episode. Like a lot of the Hallmark stuff, they've veered away from like just abandoning your hopes and dreams. But like
Yeah,
this was like, if it ain't broke, like this
yeah.
is what is happening. And
Alright.
Mary, I do you think Mary and Blake are gonna stay together? Like, do you think this is gonna
No,
last? No.
no.
There's a
Nobody falls
follow-up
in love with
movie.
Lexi.
I was about to say there's a follow-up movie where Lexi murders Mary to
Oh,
try and
that's
get back
fine with
together with
me
Blake.
too.
Yeah. Or murders Blake to get together with Mary. Like that's the movie I'm interested in.
Both more interesting endings, I'm gonna
Yeah.
say. Yep.
So I have a hunch I know the answer, but you're happily ever after. Who from this illustrious cast could you see yourself riding off into the sunset or spending your days with? Yeah,
I was
makes sense.
in love with I liked his
It is.
attitude. I liked that he just wanted to chill and eat food,
Yeah,
and he was the best one. I mean, him and Bernice, that was the love story I wanted to follow after a while. I was like,
right?
like, I
I
don't care
think
about
about this
Mary.
with a lot of these movies because there is always this like sort of side love story. And I would love a world where like now we get Bernice and Crash's story, right? Like
All I
what
wanted.
happens, like I 100% agree. Like Bernice, I feel like I could be happy with her for the rest of my life just living in that um bed and breakfast that no one comes to visit. So like you probably don't have to deal with people.
She's just
Um
gonna feed you tomatoes, but, like, there's worse things, you know?
Tomatoes and eggs and
Yeah.
whatever meal she made for Crash for dinner, which he said was okay, but he was very playful about. Like,
We never saw it, so we don't
yeah,
know.
Crash and Bernice, I think are the
Yeah.
obvious answers. I mean, the other one, Lexi, like,
I
she
could
would
be with
probably be
her till
second on
my
my
dying
list.
day,
Yeah, like
if
she
she would
seems like
let
a
me
go
borrow her
getter.
hats.
Oh, you're not touching those. She's not.
Yeah,
Those
no.
are those are 100% off limits.
Yeah.
All right, so that is reporting for Christmas. So your first delve into rom-com Christmas type objects. Thumbs up, thumbs down. What is your verdict here?
Thumbs up. I
There
liked
you
it.
go.
I liked it. I mean, I've watched worse things, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was confusing.
Yep.
I don't think it quite got to the ending that I was hoping for, but I don't know, it was quaint, it was cute.
Yeah, I agree. I would definitely go thumbs up too. I would say it's definitely a fun one to watch with like another person.
Yeah,
Like it's I did you watch alone? Did you watch with someone? What was
by
your
myself, yeah,
Yeah,
but, like, definitely laughing out loud at some of the stuff that they were saying
exactly.
was hilarious.
Like it's very and it's not you know, it's cheesy in its own special way, but it's not a bad movie by any means. And it is
No.
like there's a lot of goofy turns and like a lot of parts that you laugh at that probably aren't meant to be laughed at. But like I think if you want like the quintessential sort of Hallmark-esque what people think is like the stereotype of those movies, like this is a perfect example,
Yeah,
but like amped up to like 11, where
yeah.
usually in Hallmark movies, people are not this pissed off. Like nobody's openly an asshole.
Yeah. She
And
was
Mary,
definitely choosing to be a bitch through 75% of this movie.
I still that scene the first time they interview Alton and like her and Crash are just like openly rolling their eyes at him and Lexi and like snapping at both of them. I'm just like, what is going on here? Like that is not a Hallmark type setting.
No.
So that's reporting for Christmas. Two thumbs up with, you know, a caveat of know what you're getting into.
Mhm.
Small Town Failing Podcast is where you can go to get back episodes and all the fun that, you know, is encompassed in this. Instagram and Twitter and all those, you can get links there. Instagram, every week we post up a question, or you can just send in your own questions and comments if you want to ask. We did get a few this week, which hopefully I can find because I know I'm saying it now and I realized I didn't have them pulled up. But the first one, least favorite holiday food. Mm. Like,
Ooh.
what is kind of your, you know, not that it's eggnog or anything, but like, what's the like the holiday food that you dislike that everybody seems to like?
Honey ham.
Oh, interesting. And is that because you're not a ham person, or I am paying attention? I'm just looking up the other questions.
How dare
Is that you're not a ham person, or it's just, you know,
I
not your thing?
don't I'm not really particularly a fan of, like, mixing
Mm,
sweetness with meat.
I get
Something
that.
about that weird for me, so, yeah, I'm good, like, just make it regular ham or nothing.
That's yeah, I get it. I don't know if there's anything I dislike. I mean, fruitcake, but I feel like everybody dislikes fruitcake,
Or
even
ambrosia
though
salad is disgusting. That
oh, I don't know if you can call yourself Midwest in any way and say you
I'm
dislike ambrosia
new. I'm
salad.
learning.
Yeah.
I'm still learning. Yeah. That's
What
my
is so that's actually a good question. So you're originally from the West Coast and now in the Midwest. What is growing up with what I assume is just sun on most Christmas days
yes.
and now getting like full on winters? Like how has that adjustment been?
It's nice actually. Like the first year I was alarmed
Mm,
because it wasn't 80 degrees every day.
yeah,
So it took me a little while to acclimate, but now I just think it's so charming. You get to see all the cheesy things everybody says, the
for
leaves
sure.
change and yeah, like when it snowed the first time I was like, "Oh my god," because it was the first time it's ever snowed that I've seen that I
Oh,
was in
that's
the mountains.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, so I got to have all those cheesy moments as an adult, so it's
Nice. That's
cute.
awesome.
Yeah, I
I
like
will
it.
say, like, I grew up on the East Coast and now we live here. I'm done with the seasons. I don't really care that much about them, but it does have like when we've gone down to like Disney World and stuff around like the holidays, there is like Christmas lights on like palm trees. Like it just
Right.
doesn't fit for
It's
me.
not the same thing, yeah.
Um, so I get that. It is nice. Like we had our first snowfall and like now the Christmas lights are all covered. Like it's definitely it's a nice vibe. Um
The 3rd weekend, you have to pick up leaves, though. Like,
yeah.
you're like, "Fuck this, I don't wanna do this."
I gotta tell you, I get a lot of like gardening and yard work TikToks, and like I saw one that said, "Oh, it's good to keep your leaves down and like mow over them, or you know, it helps the grass." And I'm like, "That's all I need to hear." And
Yep,
I
good.
just do that. The yard looks like shit. I don't care. Like as long as I don't have to pick things up. All right, next question, and this is a doozy. What natural disaster slash events have you lived through, if any?
Oh my god.
It's
I feel like
dark.
we're near the same age,
Yep.
probably. We've been through all kinds of stuff as millennials.
Yeah, I
Been
like
through
that he
all kinds
said,
of traumatic
yeah,
events.
if if
My
any,
trauma
yeah.
dump.
I don't know if I like natural disasters. I always think are like
Oh,
landslides
natural
and thing like that.
disaster.
Like I have
Um,
not, I've obviously seen them and stuff, but I've never been through them.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
not to get too dark, but I was in New York on 9/11, like, and then there was the blackout after that. Like that was a thing.
that's
Um,
something to live through. Yeah, just being in California, just earthquakes.
a lot of earthquakes, I assume, right?
Mhm.
Like that's
Yeah, but
the all right, this one's a little more happy. What was your most memorable gift for your birthday or any other holiday?
One year we grew up we were just like middle class.
Mhm.
But and my parents did such a good job of just trying to get us like the nicest things that they could. But one year my dad got a bonus and he got us me and my sister a TV and an iPod. And
Oh, awesome.
I lost my mind. Like I cried probably the whole day because I was just like, it's too much. It's like it's so
Oh,
much. 'Cause, it's like those first iPods look like a brick, and I was
yeah,
just
for
like,
sure.
"Oh my god."
That's really nice. Yeah.
So sweet. So
Mine, when I was like a young kid, like maybe first or second grade, I'm gonna sound like a spoiled asshole, but we were like middle class for sure. But we got the GI Joe aircraft carrier, which I
oh,
don't know
yeah.
if you're familiar with, but like
Hell yeah.
it was this gigantic thing. It filled up our entire living room. Like my brother and I like went ape shit and lost our minds. And then like a week later, it's like, okay, this thing takes up the entire living room. Like you got
Yeah,
to take
like
this thing apart. And like it was never fully put back together again. But that thing was amazing. And every
yeah.
kid hated my guts because I got it. But that was a big one. All right. Last but not least, favorite kind of pie. Are
Oh,
you a pie person? Are you more of a pie or a cake person or just not either?
probably more pie.
Mm,
I'm not really a cake person, especially if
mm.
it's, like, store-bought cake, not a fan.
Leslie and
But
I have a lot of issues because she's definitely a cake person and I'm more of a pie
yeah,
person.
I'm more of a pie
It's
person. Pecan
oh, yeah, that's
is
a
my
good.
go-to. I like when they make it kinda boozy.
Mhm. I
Yep,
love
that's
a pumpkin pie. It's probably my go-to. Have you ever made a pie? I made my first like pie crust over Thanksgiving and it did not go well, but it tasted fine. But
yeah, it's hard. Baking is not easy, and I
yeah.
watch a lot of British Bake Off, and,
Oh,
it is not easy.
we're
Not even
we're a couple episodes behind. But the problem I had, my pie shell, it came out good, but it like shrank like as
mhm.
because you blind bake it and it just like it looked good when I put it in and then I took it out and it was like a like pile of butter in the middle
Yeah,
and
I was
like
gonna say
everything had
that
shoved
butter
it.
shifts.
Yeah. So I just ended up like dumping the pumpkin pie stuff on there and like it came out great. It was good,
Yeah.
but it did not look appetizing. All right, that's it for questions. Again, you can find them on Instagram. You can send in or smalltownfailingpodcast at gmail.com if you want to send in something long form. Milissa, where can everybody find your wares and whatnots and your art and all the magic?
Midwest Monsters, it's mid.west monsters, on Instagram. I should have an Etsy store opening soon, so that's
Nice.
gonna be fun. But yeah, that's pretty much
Awesome.
my jam.
Cool. And the stuff is amazing. Like you really definitely go check it out. We'll put a link in the notes of the show and I think that'll do it. Next time, I don't know what we're talking about, but I think Evan, if I remember correctly, is going to be here. Oh, I do know what we're talking about. It's going to be great. I have very high expectations for this, and I think Evan is very excited too. So look for that. And again, smalltownfailingpodcast.com if you want to get back episodes. The YouTube videos of these episodes are all up there. iTunes, Spotify review is a huge help. Cameo, if you need like a wonderful holiday gift of some asshole rambling for 7 minutes about nonsense, that's a thing you should do. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for, venturing into the Hallmark-esque movies for the first time. I appreciate it. And yeah, I think that'll perfect. All right. Well, we will talk to you next time. And yeah, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.